Hi, my name is Doug. This is my wife, Janan. We've been married for 22 years at this point, and we welcome you to our first episode of the Hodges Heroes, where we are just trying to make the most of the mess that we have. So, Janan, you want to introduce our family a little bit?
Sure. So I'm Janan. I started in the field of education in 2002. We have two boys. Our oldest name is Tyler, who has some special needs, and our younger son's name is Tucker, and both of them are in high school.
And we got one dog named Sydney, who you'll probably see running around in the background, chewing on stuff. And just quite honestly, we're doing this in our house. And so you're going to see our kids coming in the background, hopefully with clothes on. We'll try to edit that out if they don't. Uh, but slamming doors, eating things, dancing around in the background, that's just the nature of how we live these days. Like I said, we're making the most of our mess. So special needs, I mean, we both of us have some professional credentials. Janan in the education realm, me in the theological and psychological realms. But that's not really the focus of what we're talking about here today. I mean, we'll lean into that when we need to, but we want to just talk about what it's like to be a parent of a kid with some specialized needs. And let me just say up front that just because this is our experience with specialized needs, that does not mean it's going to be your experience with specialized needs. So we don't want to come across as telling you that we've got this all figured out. Quite honestly, we've both delayed doing this for quite some time because we very much so don't have it figured out. But we have kind of figured out that at some point we got to just move forward with what we have and be able to address some of the issues that we figured out. So one of the first questions that sometimes people will ask us, and especially if you've got younger kids and maybe even sometimes kids in the middle elementary school, is how do you know when something's not right? For some of us, that's, prenatal that something's not right. And there's some things that you have some warning on. For some of you, it's a conversation with a teacher in like second grade. That's the first time you having some clues. But Jeanette, go into some of the mile markers for us that for you was, especially staying home with Tyler early on. You were around him much more than I was. How'd you know something wasn't right?
I definitely think in that first year, as you said, I was staying home. So I was around him a lot. And I had some interactions with some other people who we went to church with. And so Tyler would go to the church nursery. He would be around other boys and girls his age. And he always was on the spectrum of regular, typical development, but he was always on the tail end. I remember when he was, I don't know,
And
under
that's stuff like when you got teeth, or it wasn't that's always like developmental milestones as much as it
right.
was like growth milestones.
Right. And like that's what I was thinking of is the teeth issue is he got his teeth in that typical spectrum of development, but he was on the tail end. And I remember some of the other little boys and girls, in his class at church, they got teeth early and he finally got him, but he was right in that normal development. Even speaking, he could speak words, but then being around other people over time, realizing, maybe when he was 2, almost 3, he was using pronouns incorrectly. When he would refer to himself, instead of saying, I want to go to the park, he would say, he wants to go to the park. He would refer to me as Bobby versus mommy. Also, some things I noticed within that first year of when he wanted to get down from a high chair after finishing eating, instead of responding in maybe a more appropriate fashion, he would rear back his head. He would do that in the high chair, or also if he wanted to get down from you. And quite honestly, there were some close calls where I thought my nose was broken and I definitely saw stars.
Yeah, he finally one day like knocked a chunk out of the back of his head at somebody's house that we were at, and that was kind of it for him. He's like, okay, maybe I should stop doing that. But even to this day, like he refers to nouns in a verb sense. So, for example, he doesn't have a toothbrush; he has a brush teeth.
Right.
So those kind of things. Not everything is like that. Some of that he's developed out of,
And
but or
compensated for
figured
over
out
the
other
years.
ways around it.
Yeah.
But that was I mean, we're talking like before one, so we were able to get conversations with our pediatrician. We were able to get, specialized programs, all that kind of stuff. But Janan, that's not everybody's story.
Exactly. I know for us too, going back to that, when he was about 2 to 3 years of age, I would sit with him and we would do school. And I called it school. But the most I could get out of him was about 10 minutes of focus. I would do colors and letters and numbers and try to color and draw. And legitimately, it was 10 minutes max. I tried everything. And so he just did not have that sustained focus that I had seen in some of my other friends' kids. And quite honestly, it's a fine line because, mom guilt is real, and we don't, even though we say we're not comparing ourselves to other people, some kids are doing things at different levels, but this was different. I truly thought he was strong-willed and defiant and just a very challenging, difficult toddler. So it was not until, sorry, the dog is petting me or poking me, sorry. It wasn't until we realized that he got diagnosed with, what was it, mild obstructive sleep apnea at the age of 3, that we realized there were some other things going on.
Yeah, he would snore at night really bad. You could hear him all over the house. I mean, it's something we just kind of had to get used to because he
And
would legit 3 rooms away would be snoring like a 80-year-old man kind of snoring.
and he would have pauses in breathing. So if we ever had to share a room with him, like at a hotel or somewhere, it would be like major gaps of breathing and it would scare you to death. So we realized after a lovely sleep study, do you remember that you had to take him to?
Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Okay, at the age of 3.
I need some trauma work on that one still. So
That he ended up having surgery and had tonsil adenoid ectomy at about the age of 3.5. And I will tell you that made a big difference. In the midst of this, we also had his younger brother who was 6 months old and also not sleeping. So really around the stages of,
yeah, we hadn't slept in 18 years.
Yeah.
So just
that's why I have these permanent bags. They're just not going away. So anyhow, that was our experience. So Doug, do you remember what happened when we took him to the pediatrician?
So the pediatrician had known my family since, he was my pediatrician,
Right.
so they had known us for like generations, like of things. My mom was like a patient at the old practice kind of stuff back in the day. And the pediatrician would basically just keep telling us, hey, this is Tyler. This is
Just Tyler.
It's the spectrum that he's on.
But they didn't say the word spectrum though.
Well, he's still on the norm. Like
The consent- yeah,
he
the
hits
norm.
all the bell
Yeah.
curves of all of the standard ages of development.
Sure.
He was on the chart. He was on the low end of whatever that chart was for things like getting teeth, for things like
He never crawled.
speaking. He never crawled. He never really jumped either. That was
No.
a really long thing for him to be able to
Hop.
actually hop and jump.
He did the
But-
tripod. Instead of crawling, he would take his big old noggin, because he had a very, very large head, and would push his head across the floor almost like in a triangle. And so, yes, those were some of those things as well. However, he was very large. So he was off the chart with weight and height.
Yeah, we had to turn him around in his car seat at like 6-8 months or something.
I think it was. And I know when I told people that, like, oh my goodness, you turn him around. We're like, that's what our
Yeah,
pediatrician
he
said
was
to
like
do.
outgrowing the car seat.
Yeah,
it was
huge.
dangerous for him to be in a rear-facing car seat kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So that for us, that was one of our first things. And that's even if you're asking that question for yourself, as he's trying to sneak by, almost trying to demonstrate the tripod walk that he had, is almost on cue. As he goes back ever so slowly with his
And the dog.
headphones. And now the dog and he are interacting in a fun way.
Just another day.
A lot of people ask the question, where do I go? What do I do? One of the first things I tell people is that this is your kid.
Mhm.
God has given this kid to you. You are responsible for raising this kid. And if there's something that you think as their parent that is not right, like chase that down. Like you're going to need to be able to try to don't let other people tell you, oh no, everything's okay. Like you are the expert on your kid. You are around your kid more than anybody else is around your kid.
Sure. And I definitely, sorry, the dog is like trying to play with a rope and under the table. Just another day. One thing I'm a big fan of, like, I usually have a pretty good gut, for lack of a better word. Like, I trust my gut. Like, if I have a feeling or a vibe, not just emotional, but just, I usually can trust that. And I have a pretty keen sense of kind of seeing what's going on. And so we did take him to our pediatrician. And I think for me, and even in education, I have parents that come up to me and say, what do I do? What do you suggest? And there's a fine line, because as teachers, we're not allowed to suggest certain things because we're not medical professionals. But usually the question I ask is, have you seen your pediatrician? Because to me, that would be that's a first step, because the pediatrician can offer some input. Sometimes they even have inventories. I know I have filled them out as a parent, Doug. I know we've done that for different checklists for like ADHD, autism, different things like that. But also as a teacher, sometimes if, let's say, a parent is going through these stages of maybe something's going on, and it's not just held to ADHD and autism, I know I have been given paperwork to fill out that then the parent collects and then gives that to the pediatrician, and then they have a discussion. So I think that is the very first starting spot.
And And even if you're looking for things before that, the CDC has a really cool website, on their website has a really cool page about just developmental milestones.
Yeah.
And it helps you kind of put things into perspective of, where should he be at, or where should he or she be at, 2 to 4 months, 4 to 5 months, 6 to 7 months, that kind of thing. How many words should they be saying? So you kind of get a sense, especially if you're a first time parent, hadn't been around a bunch of kids your whole life. You don't know what a 7-month-old should be doing versus what a 12-month-old should be doing.
Sure.
And so it gives you some insight as to saying, okay, we're in the ballpark, or, oh man, we're really off on the ballpark.
Right.
But your pediatrician is usually the first place you want to go to. You probably already have a standing appointment with the pediatrician for regular checkups. That's a place to be able to have some of those conversations. And they can tend to give you some extra insight as to, okay, we need to go get this type of testing, or we need to talk to this person, and we're talking about like under one. Of course, you're not going to be doing a lot of like, psychological interventions with less than 1-year-old. But even if you're at that ballpark of like, hey, you're in second grade and trying to figure things out,
Sure.
pediatrician's also a really good place to kind of have some of those conversations.
Right. And it could be something simple as maybe your child's acting a certain way and you realize, oh my goodness, they are getting chronic ear infections, or maybe they're having some vision things. So it could be something that's easily fixed, or it might be something that they might need a little bit more support. Now, if you are a parent and you are getting some information from the school system, whether you're private or public or charter or whatever you may be, sometimes obviously you're not under that 1 year of age. So what do? What happens when the teacher calls or the guidance counselor or a combination and they tell you, hey, your child is not performing on grade level, or they're seeing some things? What should you do?
Yeah. I mean, that teacher on a yearly basis sees people that are in that same developmental stage, 12 to 15 of them every year. They've walked through it for no telling how many years. So they have some insights to be able to know, okay, this person is where they're supposed to be. This person is not where they're supposed to be. Now, they're not a medical professional.
Correct.
They're not going to be able to give you a diagnosis. They're not going to prescribe medications or offer therapies, but they've got some pretty good insight as to, hey, there's something off here.
Sure.
So I would very much so encourage you to listen to your teachers, partner with your teachers. Don't argue with it's just, you must be a horrible teacher if my kid's not making good grades. Well, no, maybe your kid's not making good grades for any number of reasons.
Sure.
So that's a resource. I'd also encourage you, if you have other, like a MOPS group that you might be involved with, or other people with, whether it's on sports teams, just have some of those conversations with other parents. So like, hey, what kind of stuff is your kid into? What do they do? How do you deal with this? Or what do you do when they say this, or when they work through that, or that sort of thing? Your community around you can give you some of those resources.
Sure.
Hold on just a second. Sydney. She's in this room getting stuff. Yeah, you can't play with his toys. Sorry, the dog.
The dog loves Tyler's toys, and it's almost like a rebellion thing. Like, you're going to be mean to me, so I'm going to be mean to you and pick your favorite toy.
Yeah, and she'll take it and chew it and have fun with it. Yeah, she's out. He didn't notice. That was good.
That's good. Okay. So that's episode 1. And again, there are a lot of professionals around you. Again, if you...
So let me just take one step further.
Okay.
Let's say you have that conversation with your pediatrician, and let's say you have an older child and you go, man, we need more help.
Right.
We need something else. Where do you go from there? That might be, you want to talk about that now, or do you want to have that in our next episode?
I think let's plan to do that at our next episode. You have the conversation at school. You're not exactly sure what to do. That's the next step. So we'll save that for our next episode.
All right. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks.